Hi everyone. Now to run our SQL queries, we would need an SQL engine and a graphical interface to connect to a database and write SQL queries. Our SQL engine is going to be PostgreSQL and PG Admin will be our interface. Both of these will be downloaded in a single package from the PostgreSQL website. Let us go to the website www.postgresql.org. Here you will find a download button. Click on the download button. You can see there are several packages for different operating systems. I'll be selecting the Windows option here. Other operating system people should download their respective setups. We'll be attaching a separate document to give a walkthrough of Mac installation also. But for now, after clicking the Windows installer, I have reached to this page. I'll click on the download the installer link here. You can see that we have reached a different website. This website is enterprisedb.com, which is giving us the whole package. Here I'll be selecting the 10.6 version. 11.1 is the latest version and it is still under development. We'll be downloading the 10.6 version for now. And after selecting the download destination, your download will start. I will skip the video to the end of this download. Okay, our installer is downloaded and now we can start the installation process. Double click on the downloaded file. This will open up the installer. You'll have to give the rights to the app. If you would have noticed, the installer first checked if the Visual C++ was installed in the system or not. If it was not installed, it would have checked and installed the Visual C++ in your system. My system already had it, so it just went forward and now we have the setup of PostgreSQL. Click on next. This is the installation directory. If you want to change where your installed files will go, you can change it from here. Otherwise, click on next. These are the 4 parts coming in this package. We'll be keeping all the 4 parts. Click on next. This directory is the place where your data will be stored by PostgreSQL. I'll keep the default directory and move on. Next. Now you have to select the password for accessing your database. Set a password and remember this password so that while logging in, you are able to use this password and log in. Click on next, 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 next. I'll skip this installation part. Okay, so the installation is finished. I do not want to launch the stack builder, so I'll uncheck that and finish. So now if I want to look at the graphical interface, which is the PG admin, I'll have to go to the start and search for PostgreSQL 10.6, which I just installed. Here you can see the PG admin 4. Click on it. So you can see that PG admin 4 starts in the default web browser that you have. It is running on your local server, which is your own system. On the left side of the screen, you can see the option of servers. If you click on the servers option, you can see the one server that you have. If you click on it, it will prompt you to enter the password. This is the password that we entered while installing Postgres. Okay. This is the performance of your server. We need not discuss it right now. We'll go to the databases option on the left. This is the default Postgres database that you have right now. We'll be creating a new database for our own functioning. You can see within a database, if you open, there are several options. There is a schema which contains several tables. We'll be creating those tables also. So what we will have is a database. Within that database, we will create tables for customers, products, transactions that we will be doing. And within each table, we will add and delete several records. So all that we will do using SQL. And if you are wondering where to write that SQL part, you can just right click on the Postgres database and you'll see the option of query tool. Click on it, and on the right, this is where you will write the SQL queries, and below this, in this window, you will get the output of that particular SQL query that you have run. Okay, now that we have the PG admin with us, let us create a new database. This will be a test database. To create this database, we will go to the databases option, right click on it and click on the create database option. We'll just give a name to this database, which will be test, and we will save this database. Once this database is created, we will get a notification saying database connected. So the database is now connected and we have a new database. Within this database, we can add tables, but since this is a test database, we'll look at how to delete this database also. We'll just right click on this database and click on the delete option. Okay. This we saw is the graphical way of doing this. We can also create a database using SQL queries, but that we will not be covering right now. We'll start with creating a new database which we will be using for writing further queries, and we will be adding tables and datas into that database. So let's create a database called training. The second line is the owner. This is the user which is creating this database. There are other users also to whom you can give special rights to access their database. We'll be learning about creating different users and assigning them rights in the later part of this course. For now, the owner is the sole user that we have for this database, which is Postgres. Save it. Now you can see that training database is created. In this database, next what we will do is add tables. So this training database is going to be a database of customers and products and the transactions that those customers are doing. So we'll have three different tables in this database. First will be of customers, which will contain customer data. Second will be of products, which will contain product data. And third will be of the transactions. So for example, customer A is buying product B. So the third table will have information like customer A bought this much quantity of product B for this much amount. So we'll create these three tables and add data to it. So to create a table, we'll be using create table command. So before writing this command, let's look at the syntax and example of this command. So when we are creating a table, it is important that we design it very carefully. A better designed table will be taking up only required space and it will be quick in giving back the response to queries. So to create a table using the create command, we'll need to name the table and also give the names of all the columns and their data types. If you look at the syntax of this command, this starts with create table. After that, you mention the name of that table, and after that we have a bracket. Within this bracket, you will mention all the columns. For each column, you need to mention the data type which this column will contain. We will be discussing these data types in the later part of the course. Next part is Defining column constraints. This I have put in square brackets as it is optional. You need not give all the constraints while defining the table. So you list down all the columns, give the table constraints if any, you close the command using a semicolon. When writing a query, you can have any number of spaces. These spaces are immaterial. You can use multiple lines, so you can press enter after any word. And it is very important that you close the query using a semicolon. You need not remember this when you practice writing queries. This will become your habit. While writing a query, there are some good practices. For example, some developers write all the keywords in capital letters. It is not mandatory. You need not write create table in capital letters. So just to segregate and make it more readable, you can keep all the SQL commands as capital and others as normal case. Now we will look at what all constraints are available to be put on the columns. Majorly there are these 6 types of constraints. First is not null. If you define any column to be not null, it cannot have blank value, it cannot be null. So this check will ensure that whichever column is mandatory for you, while entering data, you do not miss out that value. If you miss that value while storing the data, it will give you back an error. Default constraint can be defined to store a default value if any input value is missing for that particular cell. Unique constraint will ensure that that particular cell has a unique value within that column. So using the check constraint, you can specify a certain criteria against which the data inputted will be checked. Last two are the key constraints. You can specify any column to be a primary key or a foreign key. Let us look at these 2 types of keys. A primary key is a column or set of columns which makes the values in a table unique. Primary key therefore ensures that there are no duplicate records in the database. If there are more than 2 columns used as a primary key, it is called a composite key. Foreign key is usually a column that references another column of another table. Let us look at this from an example. So suppose we have one table which is a customer table and it is storing customer ID, customer's first name and customer's last name. We define customer ID to be primary key to identify each individual customer. Customer ID will not be duplicate. Each customer will have only one customer ID. Now in the second table, which is the order table and contains the description of all the orders that we are getting, order ID is the primary key. For each individual order, we will have one unique order ID. But the customer ID is a foreign key. What this means is this column will have values which are available only in the customer ID column of the customer table. It will not have any other value. So this foreign key column is related to the primary key of the customer table and it is restricting the values in this column by the superset of values in the customer ID of customer table. So if you can imagine the values in the order table, there will be several orders which will have same customer ID. So if the same customer is ordering different products, for that order, the customer ID will be same. So the primary key of orders will be unique, but the foreign key will be having duplicate values within a table. So having duplicate values for foreign key is allowed, but it is not allowed for primary key. Secondly, when you want to find out first name and last name of a particular customer with a particular order ID, so for example, if I want to find out the customer who ordered with the order ID 1, I'll see the customer ID of the customer in the orders table and then I'll find out what is the first name and last name of that customer with that particular customer ID in the customer table. So this is the concept of keys. It is very important to specify which will be your primary key and which will be your foreign key. With this information, let us now create the first table, the customer table in our database. To create a table, we'll start writing the SQL query. If you remember how we got this screen, we right clicked on the database and selected the query tool. So right click on the training database and select the query tool. So this is where we'll write the query. We'll start writing create table. Create table is the command. After this, we will specify the table name, which is customer table. After this, we will start a bracket, and within this bracket, we will list down all the columns. First is the cust ID. Then we write data type, which will be integer, int, and next will be comma, next column, first name. This will have variable characters, varchar. Last name as again variable characters. Then we'll have age, integer. Then we will have email ID as variable characters. That's all. So we'll close the bracket and remember to put semicolon to finish this query. To run this query, you'll need to either click on this button, which is execute refresh, or you can see that F5 is also highlighted. You can just click on F5 to execute the query. Here you can see that query returned successfully in 172 seconds. So your query has run. To see the table, open the database, go to schemas. Within public, inside these tables, you will be able to see a table, but if it is not refreshed, click on refresh first. There will be one table created, which is the customer table. If you want to look at the columns also, if you open the customer table, if you click on this plus sign, there is the columns option, customer ID, first name, last name, age, email ID. These are the 5 columns that we created. In the last video, we learned how to create a database, delete a database, and create a table using the create table SQL command. With this understanding in mind, let us now look at how data is added inside the customer table that we created in the last video. Addition of data in tables is done using the insert into command. And the syntax for this command is as follows. We write insert into, then the table name, then within the brackets, we may specify the name of the columns. Specifying column names is optional. Next comes the keyword values, after which we specify the values to be inserted in a record. Now if the column names are not specified, the values will be entered in the order of columns. If I go to my table in PG Admin and see the columns, I'll open the table. Here within the table, customer table, if I open up the columns part, you can see customer ID, first name, last name, age, email ID. This is the order of columns. If the values we are entering have some missing attribute, for example, if there is age or last name missing, then we need to specify the column names after table name. Or if the values are in different order, we will need to specify the column names in that particular order. So let us look at the examples of insert into command. If you want to insert a single row without mentioning the column names, this is how we do it. We write insert into table name, which is customer table, and then the values, which will have customer ID, first name, last name, age, and email ID of that particular customer. Now let us go to PG admin and run this SQL command. This is my SQL query tool. I'll start typing insert into customer table, then values, and after that this will be the customer ID, which is 1, as this is the first record, then the first name, which is BWE. And note that for strings you need to input the data within single quotes. For numeric integers you do not need to do the same thing. And then the email ID, which is bc@xyz.com. Now select this query and run it. You can either press F5 or this run query button. Query returned successfully, so it was successful. Now to check whether this command actually added this particular record in our table, go to our table, right click on it, click on view, edit, and select all rows. Below you can see this is how our table is right now looking. It has one record, and that is exactly what we inserted into this table. In the window above this result, you can see it is running a select command to get this result. We'll be discussing the select command later. For now, we just use the graphical interface which PG Admin provided us to see the table. Let's go back to our presentation where we'll look at the second example. In the second example, suppose the next entry we do not have the customer's last name. Now if we do not mention the column names, age of the customer will then be filled in the last name, as that particular field of last name was missing in that record. To avoid this error, we need to mention the column names after the table name. So in this example, you can see the customer D does not have any last name. So we mention the customer ID, first name, age, and email ID as the columns in which value is to be filled, and then we give the values. So now let's toggle back to PG admin and run this query also. Insert into customer table space. Remember to put brackets here and write the column names. Cust ID, first name, then age, and then email. We deliberately missed out on the last name. After this, we write values and then mention the 4 values, which will be customer ID of 2, name is D, age is 23, and email ID is d@xyz.com. Run this, press F5. This also was executed successfully. Go to the table, right click, view all rows. You can see for last name the value is null. In the last lecture we also discussed there is a constraint called not null. Had there been a constraint on last name of it being not null, then this particular query would have given us an error. Now let's go back to our example and learn how to insert more than one record at the same time with just one query. So above two examples showed how to add a single row. To add multiple rows at the same time, we just need to list down all the records separated by a comma, this comma. It is important to remember this comma. Let us go and write this also in the PG admin window. You know the syntax. try to beat me in typing this query. Insert into customer table values. So this is the first record with ID 3, name E, surname F, age 27, email ID ef@xyz.com, comma, next entry 4, comma, G, last name H, age 35, gh@xyz.com, and with a semicolon, select this query and run it. So let us go back and check the data in our table. It seems correct, exactly as we expected. So did you beat me? If you did, you are simply awesome at learning this. Otherwise, better luck next time. Hold on, there is another way to add data to tables. Sometimes the data we want to have in the table is to be imported from a text file or a CSV file. You may encounter this situation less number of times, but nevertheless it is important to know. So we'll be learning how to copy a data from a file into a table using the copy command. Let us now learn how to import data from a file into a table. This can be done using the copy command. The copy command looks like this. The syntax of copy command is copy, then the table name, and then you mention the columns in which the data is to be imported. Then you give the location of the file, you specify the delimiter. The delimiter is the symbol which is segregating different columns of your data. Then comes the type of file. If it is CSV, we'll write CSV. Then if the data has headers, we'll write header. The header keyword works only if it is a CSV file. So if it is a text file, the header keyword will not work. You will have to remove the header from the text file and then import the data. So to practice this command, we will be importing data from a CSV file and a text file. Two sample files are attached in the resources section of this lecture. You can download the files and put it into the same installation directory where your Postgres was installed. I'll show you where I put my two files. This is where Postgres was installed for me. I created a new folder there and copied the two files that I have attached in the resources section. Download these two files there, and now we will write the commands. Reason why we copied these two files in the same installation folder is the SQL server may not be able to access the files on your system. This is the only folder where the files can be accessed by the server. So now we'll start typing our command. It starts with copy, then the table name, then column names. If data has different columns, we need not mention the column names. Then from the location of file. To get the address, you go to the location and check the address bar, copy the address from that place, within single quotes paste this address. You will need to mention the file name also here, which is copy.csv. After this, we'll mention the delimiter, which is comma, and CSV is the format, and my data is headers. So this query ran successfully. Let us go and check our table. You can see 5 and 6 customer IDs have been added. by this copy statement. So if you go and open this CSV file in Microsoft Excel, you'll be able to see this is exactly how the data is present in the Excel file also. Now let us copy data from a text file. We can copy this command only and make the changes. The name is copy text.txt. Delimiter is comma. It is not a CSV file and it cannot identify header column. So that is why I deleted the header row from my text file. Now let us run this command. It ran successfully. Let us see. So you can see 7 and 8 customer IDs have been added by this copy command from the text file. You can open the text file also to check that the data was separated by a comma. If you want to change the delimiter, so I'll suggest you go and change the delimiter from comma to a pipe or a and symbol probably, and then change the delimiter in this query and then run it again. These are the two ways to insert data into a table. One is to use the insert into command and the other one is to use the copy command, from where you can copy data from a file to a particular table. Now let us look at how to retrieve this data from the table, that is how to get back the records present in the customer table. Retrieval of data from tables is done using the select command. Select command is used to fetch the data from database and the result table that you get is called result sets. The syntax for select command is as follows. We write select, then mention the columns that we want to retrieve, then comes the keyword from, and then we mention the table name. If we want to get all the columns and do not want to specify any particular column or columns, we will use a wildcard. Wildcard is a special symbol. Wildcard for selecting all columns is an asterisk sign. So if we write select asterisk from table name, it will give us all the columns of that particular table. Let us look at the examples. So to retrieve only one column, for example, say if you want just the first name of all the customers that you have in your customer table, this is the query you will write. Select first name from customer table. Customer table is the table name. Let us go to PG Admin and run this command. Select first name from the table name, which is customer table. Semicolon. Select this query and run it. You can see the output below. It has the 8 records and only the first name is fetched. Now let us go back to the presentation. If we want to get multiple columns, so for example, if we now want both first name and last name for the customer, we will mention both the column names. So let's go and fetch first name and last name from the customer table. First name, comma, last name from customer table. Run it. You can see now we have the first name and the last name retrieved from the database for all the records. If you remember, we discussed that asterisk wildcard can be used to get all the columns. Let us use asterisk wildcard. So we will write select star from customer table. As you can guess, it will give us all the columns of this table. So customer ID, first name, last name, age, email ID, all the columns are retrieved for all the records. So this is how, using the select statement, we retrieve data from the table. In the last video, we learned how to retrieve data from a table, but when we were retrieving the data, all the data from the table was coming, and even if our table had duplicate values, say for example, if two or more customers had the same first name, it would have appeared multiple times. So to get rid of these duplicate values and to get only unique value, we need to use the distinct keyword with the select command. Distinct keyword will eliminate all the duplicate records and it will fetch only unique records. This is the syntax for distinct command. Select distinct, mention the column names, one or more, and then write the keyword from and mention the table name. Let us see an example. To retrieve only a single column with customer's first name, we will write select distinct customer first name from the customer table. To get multiple columns, we will write first name and age and get it from the customer table. Let us go and write this in the PG Admin window. Right now, if I do select star from customer table, if I run the last query, so overall there is no duplicate value in our table. But if you look at only the first name column, there is G value 3 times, out of which 2 have the same case and the third one has a different case. So if I want to get only the unique first names, I'll need to use the distinct keyword. Let us write select distinct first name from customer table. Take a moment to guess what will be the result of this query. And now let us run this query. So did you guess it correctly? It is giving us only 6 values back. 2 of the duplicate values have been removed. You can see there are 2 different G's still in the retrieved data, but these 2 are different in their case. That is why both these are present in the retrieved data. So let us compare this with the select query without the distinct keyword. This will make it easier to compare. You can see there are 8 entries in the first name. There were 2 G's and 2 J's. One of the J has been removed and one of the G has been removed. So that is how distinct keyword helps us identify the unique value while retrieving the data. Now let us try to retrieve more than one column from the database. We will write select distinct first name and age from the customer table. Run this query. We get only the distinct values back. Let us see what happens if we run select distinct star from customer table. Run. You can see the 5th and 7th record have all the values same except the customer ID. Due to this mismatch of customer ID, select distinct was not able to remove this duplicate value. It removes only exact duplicate rows. So let us see, by adding an exact duplicate row, we will rerun the copy statement from above. This will add the 2 rows again. We will run a select star statement once to see if the two entries are added. You can see we now have two more entries, and these two entries are exactly same. So the fifth and sixth entry and the ninth and tenth entry are exactly same. Now let us do select distinct star on the customer table. The two new records that we added, which are exactly similar to the earlier ones, will now be removed. Those will not be retrieved. So you see, we have 8 records now. So that is all with the distinct keyword. So in this video, we learned how to get unique data retrieved from the database. Let us now look at how to retrieve data which is satisfying a particular specified condition. Condition is specified using the where clause. Let us see the syntax of this clause. It starts with select. You enter all the column names which you want to retrieve from the table name, and then you specify the condition after the where clause. Let us look at some examples of these conditions. Let us say we want to find out if there is any customer who is 25 years old. This is how we do it. Select first name from customer table where age is equal to 25. This age is equal to 25 will be the condition. If it is satisfied, we will get a response back. If it is not, we will get a null response back. Let us run this query. Select first name from customer table where age is equal to 25. Only the customer with first name G is having age 25. If you wanted the distinct values, you could have used select distinct here also. That would have given you distinct response. Let us do that. Run it. You see only one G returned. Now if you want to put a condition of age more than 25, you can change this equal to sign to greater than sign, and then run this query. The condition that we applied right now is numeric in character. That is, we are checking if that particular number is equal to or more than 25 or not. We can put conditions on textual variables also. You can match the variable. So for example, if you want to get all the information of the customer with first name G, we will write select star from customer table where first name is G. Let us run this query. You can see all the columns have been retrieved, but only those rows we have got as a result which have first name as G. One more thing you can note here is in the previous query we retrieved only first name, but we put a check on the age column. So these two columns were different. This is allowed by PostgreSQL. So some variants of the SQL server would make it necessary that the column on which you put your condition is part of your selected columns. But the way we wrote the query, that is allowed by PostgreSQL. So in this video, we learned how to put condition while retrieving data. Next, we will learn how to put multiple conditions at the same time in the same query using and OR operator. Let us now look at how to retrieve data which is satisfying multiple conditions. Multiple conditions can be applied using the and or operators. And operator is used when we want that all of the conditions are satisfied, whereas or operator will be used when we want to retrieve the data with any one of the conditions satisfied. Let us look at the syntax. We select columns from table name, where this will be the condition 1. After this, if you want to have an and operator, we will write and. If you want or operator, we will write or, and then we will specify the second condition. We can continue doing so. We can have n number of conditions. Let us look at an example. If we want to get the customers whose age is between 20 and 30 years, we can do this by using the and operator. So these customers will be satisfying the condition that their age is more than 20 years and their age is less than 30 years. So we will select first name, last name and age of the customer from customer table, where age is greater than 20 and age is less than 30. Let us go and write this in PG Admin. Select first name, last name from, let's add age also, from customer table, where age is greater than 20 and age is less than 30. Let's run this query. You can see 5 records are retrieved and age of all these 5 customers is between 20 and 30. Now if we want all the other customers, that is customer whose age is less than 20 or more than 30, we will be using the or operator. Let us write that. Select first name, last name, age, where age is less than 20 or age is greater than equal to 30. Let's run this. You can see all the customers who have age less than 20 or age less than 30 have been retrieved. These are the other 5 rows of the table. Apart from and or, there is one more logical operator called not. Not operator is used to negate a condition. So last time when we found out that there is one customer with age 25, if we want to find out all the other customers, we can just use not. So let us write this example where we are finding out all the customers with age not is equal to 25. From customer table, where not age is equal to 25. So this will give us all the customers with age not equal to 25. So last time, if you remember, we got 3 records. Our table has total 10 records. These are the other 7 records. Now you can use this not operator along with and or operator. So for example, if you want to specify that you want to get all the customers with age not equal to 25 and The customer's first name should not be J. So both of these conditions can be applied simultaneously. We will write select star from customer table where not age is equal to 25, where not age is equal to 25 and not first name is equal to J. You can run this to see the J records are also removed. Now we have only 4 records in the result. So these are the 3 logical operators which help us put multiple conditions in the same query. Next, we will learn how to update or delete rows from our table. To update records, update query is used in SQL. This is the syntax of update query. It starts with update, then we mention the table name, and then is the keyword set. After this, we mention the column and its value which is to be set. We can specify multiple columns, then we can give where condition. So we saw where condition to specify different conditions. We can use where if we want to update particular records. If we want to update the whole table, we may not use the where condition. So let us look at some of the examples of update query. Let us say we want to update the age and the last name of the customer whose customer ID is 2. So if we go to the database and we look at the table, let us see the customer with customer ID 2. Customer table where cust ID 2. So this customer is 23 years old and the last name of this customer is missing. If you want to add the last name and change the age to 17 years, this is how we do it. We write select, we write update, table name, then we write set, specify the column name which is last name, then we give it the value of p, and then we specify age column and give it a value of 17 where customer ID is 2. Let us run this. One value updated. Let us go and check. So you can see last name of the customer is updated to P and age is now 17. Now if you want to update email IDs of customers whose first name is G or small cased G, you can see in our table, if you search customers with name G, let us get all the customer names from customer table. Let us run this to look at our data table first. We can see that there are 4 customers with first name G and one of them has the name G in small case. For all these 4 customers, we want to update the email ID to gee@xyz.com. So how to do that? We will write the update query, update customer table, set email ID to GEE@xyz.com, where first name is equal to G in small case, in camel case, and then G in small case. You can notice that we are using OR operator to give two conditions at the same time. Let us run this and let us run the select query again. You can see for the customers, the last four customers with name G, all four have the same email ID, which is GEE@xyz.com. This was not the email ID when this table was created earlier. So that's how we update the rows of a data table. Now let us see how to delete one or more rows from a table. To delete rows, delete query is used. The syntax of delete query is delete from, mention the table name, and then give the condition for the rows to be deleted. Condition will be given again using the where clause. Let us see some examples. If you want to delete a single row, we can just run a query to delete from customer table where customer ID is 6. If we want to delete multiple rows, say if we want to delete all the customers who are less than 25 years old, we will write delete from customers from customer table where age is less than 25. If you want to delete all the rows of the table, we will use delete from customer table and not mention any condition. Let us go to PG Admin and write these three queries. Now let us delete the customer with customer ID 6. We will write delete from customer table where cust ID is equal to 6. Let us run this and let us see the result. If you remember earlier we had 10 records. After deleting this one record, we should be having 9 records. So we have 8 records in the result because 2 customers had customer ID 6. Now if we want to delete all the customers whose age is more than 30 years. So if we look at the data, customer with customer ID 1 and customer ID 8, customer ID 4, these 3 customers have age more than 30 years. Let us delete these 3 customers from our database. Delete from customer table where age is equal to age greater than 30. Let's run this. It ran successfully. Let us run the select query. You can see only 5 remain. Earlier we had 8. 3 customers had age more than 30. Now no customer has age more than 30. You can delete all the rows of this table. To do that, we will not specify any condition. We will just tell it to delete from customer table, and that's it. If we run this query, everything from the table will be deleted. Let us run it. Run the select command. You can see only column names are there. That's all what this table now has. It has no rows, no data in it. So that's how you delete data from a table. In the next lecture, we will learn how to change the structure of the table. Structure of the table is comprised of the columns, column names, or the constraints added to the columns. All these things constitute the structure of the table, and we will learn how to change the structure of the table. Let us now look at how to change the structure of a table. If I run select star command now on the table, we can see that the table has 5 columns, and each column has a column name and a column type. Adding or deleting a column or changing this column name or this type or adding constraints is called changing the structure of table. To change the structure of a table, we'll be using alter table command. Let us look at the presentation. So the syntax of this alter command goes like this. We will write alter table and then write the table name, and then we will specify the action. Actions can be broadly classified into 3 parts. One will be actions on columns, which will include adding, deleting, modifying, or renaming a column. Or it can be on constraints, which will include adding or deleting a constraint, or you can add or delete an index. Let us first look at how to add or delete a column. To add a column, we will write alter table and the table name, then type add, and then write the column name and then specify the data type of that column name. Let us go to the PG admin interface. Let us write alter table, customer table. This is the table name. Then add. Then what will be the column name? It will be test column. And it contains a varchar type of data. Let us run this command. Query was successful. Let us run the select star command again. You can see at the end of the table we have a new column called test, and it has that particular data type that we specified, which is variable characters with 255 maximum limit. This is how we added a column in our table. Now let us delete this column using the delete command. Let us look at the syntax first. To delete a column, drop command is used. So we will type alter table, table name, then write drop and then the column name. We can also write drop column and then specify the column name. Let us try these two variants. Drop test. Let us run this. It was successful. Let us run the select star command again. You can see the last column is now deleted. You can also write drop column and then specify the column name. I'll add the test column again, and now I'll delete it again using the drop column command. Just run the select star command again to check. Yes, the test column is deleted. Next, we will look at how to modify a column. What can we change in a column? We can change the data type that column will be containing. So if earlier age is an integer type of column, we can change that data type to variable characters. The syntax for that will be alter table, table name, and then alter column, column name, and then you specify the new data type for that column. Let us go and change the data type of age column from integer to variable characters. Alter table, customer table, then alter column, column name, type, then the new type which will be varchar. Run this command. It was successful. Run the select star command to look at your data. You can see age, which was earlier integer, is now variable character type. Now if you want to rename any particular column, say for example we have email ID column here. If you want to rename to customer email, how to do that? Let us look at the syntax. So to rename a column, this is the syntax. Alter table, mention the table name, then rename column. First we will write the column name, the old column name, then the keyword to, and then you will specify the new column name. So let us go and change the name of email ID column. Alter table, table name, then rename column, old column name, then to, new column name. Run this command. It was successful. Let us run the select star command. You can see the column name which was earlier email ID is now customer email. Now let us look at how to add or delete a constraint. So till now we did not have any constraint on any of the columns. If I want to add a constraint such as my first name or the customer ID cannot be null, so that whenever I'm getting the data entered from any source, my database checks and confirms that it is conforming to the specified constraints. To do that, we will need to add that particular constraint to our table. To add that constraint, this is the syntax: alter table, table name, alter column, column name set to not null. So this particular column cannot be null. Whenever you will be inserting data into any particular column, this column must have some value. If it is not having any value, it will give a error. So let us go and run this query. Alter table, customer table, alter column, column name. This is cust ID and this should not be not null. So set not null. So the not null constraint will be applied to cust ID now. Let us run this. This is successful. Now let us try to insert values where customer ID is missing. So we will insert into customer table. We'll need to specify the column names. It will start with first name, last name, age, and email ID, customer email. And then it will have values A, B, C, D, A, B, 25, and an email ID. So when I run this command, I get this error, null value in column customer ID, which violates the not null constraint. This is the constraint that we applied earlier. Now if I want to remove this constraint, how to remove this particular constraint? Let us go and check the syntax first. Syntax to remove the not null constraint is same as above, but instead of the set keyword, we'll be using the drop keyword. So let us go and write this command with the drop keyword. Alter table, table name, alter column, cust ID, drop not null. So this will drop the constraint of not null. Let us run this. Ran successfully. Now let us try to insert the earlier one. This also ran successfully. Let us run the select star command to check if the data is added. You can see cust ID is having null value because it did not have the constraint of not null. Next, now if you remember, we also discussed that there is a constraint named check. If you want to put a check on the value that any particular column is containing. So let us now add a constraint where the customer ID value cannot be less than 0. So it cannot be negative. So we'll add a constraint that the value should be greater than equal to 1. So let us go to the PG admin interface and add this constraint. Alter table, table name, add constraint, constraint, mention the column name, cust ID, and check in bracket cust ID should be greater than equal to 0, greater than 0. So let's run this. It ran successfully. Now let us try to insert a value where cust ID will be negative. So insert into table name, values -1, A, C, D, 67 and an email ID cd@xyz.com. So if we will run this, we should get an error and redo. If you read the error, it says new row for relation customer table violates check constraint. That's the check constraint that we added, and it is violating that particular constraint. Apart from this, you can specify whether a particular column is a primary key for you or not, and you can also specify a column to be a foreign key. We discussed primary and foreign key earlier also, and in the later part of the course you will find another separate video on primary and foreign keys. So let us add this constraint of primary key and a foreign key on our table. First, let us look at the syntax. So to make a column a primary key, this is the syntax: alter table, table name, add primary key, and then the column name. So if we go and make cust ID our primary key, we will write alter table, table name, add primary key, then the column name. This will make cust ID as the primary key. So the column name should be in brackets, bracket cust ID, and we run this command. So you can see that we are getting an error message which is saying column cust ID contains null values. So we are unable to make cust ID as a primary key because it is containing a null value, whereas primary key cannot have null values. Therefore, what we'll do is we will delete the row which has the null value and then we'll make it the primary key. Delete from customer table. So if you remember this, we did in the previous videos how to delete rows from a table. We'll not put any condition, we'll clean the table. Delete from customer table. So delete from customer table, we will run. So now our table has no values. Now that my table is clean, I'll insert one value into our table using the insert into command. Let us run this insert into command. So if I run select star, I can see that I have that one value. See, you can see that we have that value. Now let us make cust ID as the primary key. Order table, customer table, add primary key. Brackets cust ID. Run this command. It ran successfully. It is now a primary key. So to make any particular column as a foreign key, we have given a syntax here. This presentation will be part of the resources for this lecture. I'll suggest that you open this presentation, look at the syntax and try to do it on your own. So in this video, we have learned how to change the structure of the table. Now it is time to master all the commands of data querying. We'll see you in the next video.
Hello everyone. In this lecture, we will cover a very important topic of relational database, that is foreign key and primary key. Interviewers and teachers generally ask this concept in job interviews and vivas, so it is very important to have a clear understanding of primary keys and foreign keys. Primary key is a field or a collection of fields in one table that uniquely identifies a row of that table. You must have your employment ID or student roll number for your organization or school. Such numbers uniquely identifies you in your organization or schools. Similarly, each row in table can be identified uniquely by using a primary key. So suppose I own a grocery store and I have a unique customer ID for each customer visiting to my store. My customer ID can be used as a primary key of my customer table. And suppose I am recording each order of these customers in my order table and assigning order ID to uniquely identify each order. My order ID can be used as a primary key for my order table. And it is not necessary to use a single field as a primary key. We can also use combination of different fields as a primary key. So suppose I have a unique product ID for all the products that I have in my grocery store, and there are some variants of those products as well. So suppose product 001 is for cola, then I have two different variants of cola, that is 500 ml and 1 liter. Therefore, in this table, I can assign a combination of product ID and variant to create primary key for this table. When we are using multiple fields as a primary key, we call it a composite key. Now, try to think of a primary key when you have a data of different cities and you have attributes such as city name, country name, state, population, mean temperature, pin code, longitude and latitude of that city. Pause this video for 5 to 10 seconds and try to identify the primary key in this data. Now let's go one by one over each of the given field. Our first field is city name, but there can be multiple cities that have the same city name. In fact, we have a city named Rome in all the continents except Antarctica. So we cannot assign city name as a primary key for this table. Next is the country. Then multiple cities in each country have a same country name. So therefore, we cannot assign country name as a primary key. Similarly, multiple cities will have same states. Therefore, we have to rule out state as well. Then population and average temperature can be equal for two cities. Therefore, we cannot assign these two fields as our primary key. Now, pin code or zip code cannot be same for two cities. Therefore, we can assign pin code or zip code as our primary key. Similarly, a combination of latitude and longitude is unique for each city. Therefore, we can use a combination of these two fields, longitude and latitude, to create a primary key. This is also an example of composite key. I hope the concept of primary key is now clear to you. Now we will move on to the foreign key. Foreign key is a field in one table that uniquely identifies a row of another table. What I mean by it? Let's revisit our customer order and product example. So suppose for our order table, we are storing order ID as our primary key and customer ID to identify the customer information from the customer table, and the product key to identify what all products they are purchasing in this order. In this case, customer ID and product key are our foreign keys for this order table. We can use these keys to import additional information from our customer table and product table by directly matching this customer ID of order table with the customer ID of customer table and product key of our order table with the combined column key of our product table. So hence, customer ID and product key is the foreign key of our order table. In short, we can say that the primary key of other tables are the foreign keys of the given table. This is not necessarily true in all the cases, but it's generally true in most of the cases. I hope these concepts are crystal clear to you now, as these concepts are very important and are frequently asked in job interviews and vivas. Thank you.